Embroidery stitches. Procedure. Back stitch. A. Bring the thread through A and take it in through B. This creates one stitch. B. Bring the thread through C and take it in through B. This way, we are creating a stitch by taking the thread backward. C. Bring the thread through D and take it in through C. Continue this pattern to finish the design. D. A finished line of backstitch will look like this. Bullion stitch. A. Bring the needle up, take it down through the fabric at the desired stitch length, taking care to not pull the thread all the way through the fabric and bring it up partly through the same point. B. Wrap the thread around the needle without any overlapping as shown in the figure. The distance of the wound thread should be the same as the stitch length mentioned in step 1. C. Use your finger to hold the wrapped thread and pull out the needle through the wraps. Pull the needle up completely in the upward direction till the turns lay on the cloth as shown. D. In the end, gently push the wraps close to each other with the needle and take the needle down through the end point of the row, maintaining tension in the thread. E. The stitch is now complete. It takes a linear shape like a skinny football. 3. Chain stitch. A. Bring the needle through at the top of the traced line. B. Hold the working thread down towards the left with the thumb. C. Insert the needle at the point where the thread has just come through and bring it up on the traced line about 1/16 of an inch 1.5 millimeters further along. D. Repeat as needed. Simply continue this pattern to continue adding links to your chain. 4. Cross stitch. Variation 1, Traditional. A. Bring the needle up through A and take it diagonally across to B. Bring it back again through C, which lies vertically below A. B. Now put the needle in through D, which lies vertically above B. You have made a single cross. C. Continue by putting the needle in through E and bring it out through the previous point D. D. Put the needle in through F to complete the second cross. Now, bring the needle up through the previous point E to begin for the third cross. Continue this process. E. A row of cross stitch. It would appear like this. The same technique is followed for a vertical row. Variation 2, Danish style. A. Make a row of diagonal stitches as shown. B. On the return journey, complete the crosses by connecting the ends using diagonal stitches as shown. A vertical row can also be done using the same technique. 5. Feather stitch. A. Begin by bringing up the needle from B. Now, put the needle in through D and bring it out from C. Note that the points on B and D falls on a straight line, and C lies diagonally to both B and D. Pull the needle out with a thread under it, as shown. We would form our first V. B. We now move to make our next V. Continue to put the needle in through A and bring it out through B. Pull the needle out with a thread under it as shown, to make the next V. C. Now, continue the procedure by putting the needle in through the outer stitch line and bringing it out from the inner stitch line. We keep alternating between the left and right side to make the V's, putting in the needle through A and bringing it out from B, putting the needle in through D and bringing it out from C. D. Once a small portion of the feather stitch is done, this is how it would look like. 6. Fishbone. A. To begin with, bring the needle up through point A, which is the top tip of line Y. Put it in through B, to make a single straight stitch. B. Now, bring the needle up from a point very close to A on the line X. Put it in through a point very close to B on line Y. Again pull out the needle through a point very close to A on line Z. C. This procedure of putting in the needle through X and Z alternatively will follow. Each time we will be connecting X, Y and Y, Z. D. Make sure all the stitch points lie close to each other to avoid any visible spaces. E. Halfway through, our leaf would look like this. You can see the rib being formed. F. Once finished, the filled leaf would look like this. 7. French knot. A. Bring the needle up through A. B. Now, place the needle close to the fabric. Wrap the thread around it twice, as shown. C. Keep the longer end of the thread pulled with your fingers while putting the needle back in a point just close to A or even through A. 8. Herringbone stitch. A. Bring the needle up through the first stitch line at A. Now, take the needle in through B, which lies diagonally across A on the second stitch line. Then, take the needle backwards up through C, which lies near B. B. Now, the same procedure will be worked on the first stitch line. Take the needle diagonally across to D and bring the needle backwards up through E. C. Continue to make such crosses on both stitch lines alternately. Make sure the diagonal stitches are parallel to each other to bring out the best look. 9. Lazy daisy chain stitch. A. Bring the thread out through A. Put in the needle near A and bring it out through the point B, but don't pull the needle out completely. Now, loop the thread around the needle, like we would in chain stitch. B. Pull out the needle out to tighten the loop. Put in the needle just outside the chain created and that will finish the lazy daisy stitch. C. This standalone stitch can be used freely to be a part of any design. Since I have decided to make a flower, I will proceed with making multiple lazy daisies around the marked stitch line. D. The completed flower made of multiple lazy daisies. 10. Looped stitch. A. Lay the foundation by doing a running stitch. Take a contrasting colored thread and bring it out from near the first running stitch. B. Start following the Pekingese stitch technique. Take the needle in through the second stitch and come out through the first, making a loop. C. Continue this action of looping using the running stitch foundation, as illustrated. D. Finish up the pattern for it to look like this. 11. Running stitch. A. Bring the needle up at point A. B. Then take it down at desired length at point B. C. Again, bring up at desired length at point C. D. Keep working like this, up and down, at desired lengths. 12. Satin stitch. A. Bring the needle up through A and put it in through B. So, that makes a stitch which covers a small area between the stitch lines. B. Now, bring the needle back through C, a point very close to A. Continue this action over the two stitch lines. C. Once finished, the area is filled as shown. You will be spending as much thread on the reverse side as you do on the actual side of the fabric. 13. Split. A. Bring out the thread out through A and put it in through B. B. Take the needle backwards to bring it out through C. Note that C lies halfway between A and B. C. While bringing out the thread through C, take it in between the thread, splitting it into two. D. Again, put the needle in through D to bring it out through B, splitting the thread. E. Continue this procedure to finish the stitch. The only thing to keep in mind is to split the thread when bringing the needle out. In some way, it will give you a visual feel of chain stitch. F. The reverse of the fabric will give you a back stitch pattern. 14. Seed. A. Make rows of short running stitches illustrated. You need not do row after row, as long as the strawberry seed pattern is more or less maintained. B. Try not bend with the curves of the pattern. The rows of running stitch should essentially be done in straight lines. 15. Stem stitch. A. Start by inserting the needle at point A and bring the thread up. Turn the needle over and insert the needle from point B to point C. Note that the point C is the middle point of point A and point B. B. Bring the needle up and point C and pull the thread up. C. Again turn the needle and insert at point D to point B. Continue working like this for the rest of the pattern. Thank you.